Welcome to Inside Out, Mental Health at Work and in Life, where we're exploring why our workplaces feel the way they do and what it takes to build cultures that support genuine well-being. I'm your host, Catherine Eady, and today I'm joined by Michael Alexander. Welcome to the show. Before we get into the topic of mental health at work and in life, for people meeting you for the first time, could you share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me, Catherine. So I'm the CEO of a company called JAANUU. We are a medical apparel company that was founded by a pediatrician, by a female pediatrician, which is pretty unique in the space. And I took over the helm as CEO about 2 years ago and have a lot of experience in the apparel and specifically scrubs medical apparel industry.
Yeah, it's funny you were saying that. I was having a look at the website and I'm thinking scrubs and apparel. It's just not something we even think about, is it? And then I came across a blog that said the psychology of scrub colors. I was like, oh, that is
Oh yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. We did a our business is based on if you look good and you feel good, then you are going to give better patient care at the bedside. And we did a big survey called the Scrub Effect, where we surveyed 1,000 healthcare professionals and proved that theory. So that's kind of our whole purpose as a
Yeah.
business: is look good, feel good, do good.
Yeah, which leads us really nicely onto the kind of first pretty broad question, but ultimately from your experience, when you're thinking about that mentally healthier workplace, what does it look like in practice for you? What's important?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I believe that my job as the CEO is to drive culture in the business, and I think if you have a culture where everyone feels comfortable speaking up, being themselves, I think it really improves the mental health of the organization and everyone within the organization. So, when I stepped into this is my first CEO role, and I was a big fan of Tony Hsieh, who was the founder of Zappos, and he wrote this book. And one of the things that he said is that a CEO's job, number one job, is to drive culture. And so I was always, critical of that in an organization, and like, oh, why isn't this person doing this or doing that to make the business better internally, from a culture perspective. And so then stepping into this role, I'm like, okay, put your money where your mouth is, like you've been saying this. So like that culture piece for me is at the forefront of everything that I do. And I think that ultimately translates to better mental health for all of everyone working in the organization, because they want to be here.
Yeah. I mean, mustn't underestimate that physical and mental health connection that feed into each other. We are one being, and we have the physical and mental health side in us all. You touched on Zappos as well, and it was a book I'd read a long time ago actually, and it started to make me think about that culture piece as well. Um, in culture specifically, what are some of the core values that you think form a good culture? You touched on psychological safety, but of course we have to develop that.
Yeah.
So how do you get to that good culture and psychological safety and psychosocial safety?
I mean, I think you have to have the right team around you, right? And the right people that are rowing in the same direction that you're rowing in. But I think, communication and consistency and coaching, like the 3 C's. I had a mentor that told me that one time. And I think that if you're constantly communicating and you're constantly updating people so that their minds don't start to wander, I think that that's really, really important. And giving people the autonomy and the ability to shoot the ball, right? And I talk about that a lot. I'm like, if we're gonna win, we got to shoot. We can't hold the ball. We can't just sit and pass the ball to win. You have to shoot. And if people feel comfortable shooting the ball and missing, it's okay. Like, shoot the ball, miss. then figure out what did I do wrong and shoot it again, you know? And so I think when you have people that understand what's going on, we have town halls, we have, you know, Slack channels, we use Slack. So there's a lot of different Slack channels, and, you know, we have executive meetings every week, and we share out what happened in the executive meeting. I mean, I think being transparent is really, really important, and letting people know, you know, what's going on makes them feel comfortable with shooting the ball and making decisions. I had a guy who was on a board on a couple companies ago, and he was a SEAL Team 6 member, you know, with the U.S. Navy SEALs, and he had talked about they were in Mogadishu, and they were walking to this town in the dark, and there's like 12 members or something, and he's the lead member. And this story came because I asked him, like, what did you learn in the Navy SEALs that I could maybe apply to business? And he said, so we're walking, and it's pitch black, and there's a drone overhead, and it's way up, and it's looking at everything, it's looking at all the fields, and we're spaced out like 150 yards apart. And he said, I would set a timer on my watch every 2 minutes, and I would come on the radio, and I'm in the front, and I've got the drone, and everybody's communicating to me, but these guys in the back, they're not hearing anything. It's quiet. They're just walking. And he said, so every 2 minutes it would buzz me, and I would say, everything's good. All the radios are working, the drone's overhead, you know, we have eyes on, and it would keep the guys in the very far back, hundreds of yards behind, from their minds wandering. And I think with business, having that like consistency is really important too, because people's minds start to wander when they don't hear what's going on, and they start to think like, oh, is my radio broken? You know, is there a guy in the field that's going to do something bad? You know, I mean, there's all these things that happen. And I think that was a kind of an interesting story that always sticks with me, is you got to keep consistent. You got to keep talking. It's really important.
Yeah, it's a good kind of touch on that in terms of communication and clarity, making sure people, because communication, I guess, is one thing. How clear is what you've communicated is another, and how it's received is another. And you touched on attention a few times, and we are dealing with, I think, many people less able to retain information as much as they used to, just with kind of a whole attention drift, and we're not quite as focused and fully concentrating in our digital landscape as we used to be. So there are challenges within that, but I think the layers of that, and I think you touched on people being able to ask if something's not clear. And that's something I have learned along the way as well. I think it's all right communicating, but how's it been received? And has the person understood that communication? And then you're alleviating you're making someone feel much more comfortable, aren't you? And much more at ease. And it's like, right, I've got it. I know what I'm doing, and I've got the information I need, and the transparency you touched on. Is there anything missing that I need to check? And that all leads to people feeling much better, doesn't it, about the work that they're doing and their sense of purpose, I guess, at work.
I think so, you know, and I think the sense of purpose is another huge piece. And that's where, you know, we're not curing cancer by making medical apparel, right? But we're helping those that are, you know, and we're helping those that are helping our loved ones and our family members and friends. And so, you know, if we can do our part and we have that purpose in our business, which is if they look good, then they feel good. And if they feel good, then they give better care. We're doing something. And I think to rally behind a purpose is really important with your job as well, right? And, you know, to feel like, hey, I'm doing something good and this is why we're doing it. The whole why behind the what is important.
Yeah, you're contributing to that. Absolutely. Yeah. So where do you see organizations getting stuck right now? In terms of, if you're looking outward from where you are, but you're seeing maybe other companies and people you connect with and have conversations with, where are others getting stuck?
I think ego from the leadership side gets a lot of companies stuck. You know, I think when when you lead with ego, you get in trouble. And like, I never see it go well when the ego gets involved. And I think that I talk about it a lot internally, and I write on my whiteboard behind me all the time. I always write, be humble, because I think it's really important as a leader to be humble. And I think organizations where the ego gets ahead, or, you know, people feel like they need to control it, or they need to like put a thumb on the organization, and this is how I do it, so this is how everybody should do it. You know, things are evolving, right? And you talked about AI early on. There are better ways of doing things, and you know, like, I come to the meetings, I have an opinion, I have a point of view, I have an idea, but I always want to hear what everybody else has to say, because you might have a better idea. And so it's like, hey, let's pivot off of what I thought and let's move to what you think. And I think that organizations that can act that way aren't stuck, and organizations that do act that way get stuck. And it, you know, maybe it doesn't, you know, maybe the product's so great and all the things that the organization is doing is so great that it doesn't affect it early on, but long term, I think you start to see the issues come out.
It's interesting you touched on ego. Actually, I'd recently, just last week, spotted some content online just about that very topic, and the impact that can have. And I think there have been some research on where ego is yes, too much in a workplace, how damaging that can be. We've still kind of got instances of bullying and maybe hierarchical positions where people think they are better than someone else. Even people on the same level as them, that can happen as well. And I think the other thing, and I'm just thinking about what you said, is certainly in the UK, I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but it's quite a big fear-based culture here in the UK. Getting things wrong almost has the most absolute dire of consequences. And I think we've reinforced that far too much for people, that the fear is, I can't. You touched on autonomy, and you know, when we're thinking about progressive organizations, they're very much the opposite of led by fear. They're led by doing no matter what. If something doesn't go quite right, you adjust it. So yeah, I think, you know, fear's a big thing, I think, that continues in the workplace.
I think that's the whole shoot the ball piece, and letting people feel like, hey, it's okay to miss. I mean, I want you to miss, because that's how we learn. And if you don't miss, you're not gonna score, you know. So you've got to miss. I mean, Michael Jordan, you know, arguably the greatest basketball player, he's got that quote of, I've missed 9,000 baskets, I've missed, you know, game winning, this, that, and the other. And then you get to the bottom and it's him, and you go like, oh my gosh, he's like the most winningest basketball player there is. But look at all the failures he's had, you know, look at all the shots he's taken that he's failed, but he took those shots still, and he's a winner, you know. And so I think shooting the ball and not being afraid to fail, as long as you adjust, right? Like, you miss, like, you got to adjust, you know. If you just keep shooting at the same spot and missing, that's a different story. But you know, adjust and shoot it again. And having that culture of fear, I think, is here too in the US. But that's not what we want here, you know, at least at my company, or any company that I'm going to be involved in. I don't want that. And I think our CFO, he talks about asking for help as a power move.
Yes.
Which I love, you know. And so it's like, ask for help. It's okay. Like, you don't have to know it all.
No, you can't possibly. And you touched on coaching earlier as well. And you're right, you know, that you learn something from something that's not gone quite right. And if you need to be, if it keeps happening, there's something there's maybe an education piece or a coaching piece or mentoring that needs to happen for that person to then get that better and get that right. So I think, you know, it comes down to what we don't know until someone says, I'm not sure how to do this, or in what way I need to do this. So yeah, I mean, I think openness, transparency, communication, you know, we've touched on all of those things that are absolutely vital in your organization. Are there any kind of pressures or blind spots that you wish leaders paid more attention to? You touched on ego, which is, kind of blends into that. If, because there's something about ego and self-awareness. If you're not self-aware, that ego's going to stay there. So blind spots is an interesting question from a perspective of, well, there needs to be a level of self-awareness to tackle that blind spot. But what kind of blind spots, do you think leaders need to be paid more attention to?
Yeah, I think the ego piece is there, but either you got it or you don't, I guess, or you've got to keep that awareness. Coming into the role, for me, you see a lot of bad things that you don't necessarily see in other roles within the organization. I was a president of my last company, and I was executive vice president of a company before. So I had worked my way up, but when you get to the top, then you see things that you don't see in other roles. Mm-hmm. And I'm a half glass full guy and very positive and give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think as a leader, you don't want to get jaded, and for me, I'm always like kind of checking that of like, I want to still be that half glass full guy. Like, even though these bad things have happened, or I've seen, things that have disappointed me, I still want to keep that in check, because I think it's important to, believe in people and still stay positive, even though you see some of the kind of the bad things that happen, which for me, that was a huge learning that I didn't expect. I did not think of that. Nobody ever told me that. But there's things that happen and you go, oh my God, I can't believe that person actually did that. Like, is that real? Did that really happen? Oh, and then I don't want to get jaded.
Yeah. And it is interesting for thinking about that and thinking about the people that you can help turn that around. You touched on the benefit of the doubt. If an instance or whatever, something's happened, it's first time, it wasn't that great, that didn't go so well, or we need to deal with this. What does different look like? Mm-hmm. And allow them that opportunity to change the things that like that happen. Mm-hmm. Following on from that, how has your own experience shaped the way that you think about mental health at work and kind of well-being and psychology, and what particularly you're being in your position for the last 2 years as well, as you said, do you have a slightly different perspective on it than you used to have?
Not necessarily. I mean, I don't think I've totally changed or have changed my perspective necessarily on mental health, but I'm very careful about sending an email or sending Slacks, on a weekend, as an example, or like late at night, so I'll schedule those communications to go out like the next morning. So I'm more aware of those types of things, because I think I'm probably, if not the oldest guy, one of the oldest guys in the company now. And you've got younger people that have different priorities. And, you talked about attention span and things like that, and kind of the digital culture, the TikToks and things of that sort. So just kind of being aware of what motivates people. And, not everybody's motivated by money. Not everybody's motivated by a promotion. Not everybody's motivated by winning. Some people are motivated by other things, and like adapting to that and trying to understand, like, oh, Catherine is motivated by X, whereas Brian is motivated by Y, and then adapting to that, I think, is really important. Mm-hmm. I think I've always been pretty good at that. I think empathy is one of my strengths, and always has been, but as you get into the role that I'm in now, you have to be much, much more aware of it and make sure that your leaders also understand that, and that they can see that within their people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you touched on a couple of things there I'm thinking about. Certainly in the UK, young people's mental health here is not great. I think it's probably similar over in the US, and we have young people coming into the workplace who do have significant levels of mental health struggles. They're determined to to be in work. But I think the adjusting we need to do based on different people's circumstances is, again, for you, does it come down to better communication again about well-being and health and mental health as well? I mean, are people open about their health and well-being in the workplace? And is that important to you as a company?
Oh, absolutely. It's really important for us as a company. I'm not sure if people are as open about it. I think maybe they're more open about it than they've ever been before, but people still hide things, and you can tell when somebody's off. And, I talk to the team, everybody, not just the leaders in the team, but relationships are like hands of a clock, right? You want to keep the relationships at 12, and the hands of the clock will pull apart, right? And that, like, naturally they pull apart, and you want to make those like micro adjustments while the hands of the clock are fairly close together, because once the hands of the clock get too far and you let something go on too long, it's really hard to get them back to 12, And so I think trying to have those micro adjustments as much as you can is really important. And especially in today's day and age, like I pick up the phone and make phone calls as much as I can. And I think people kind of laugh at that too, but to have those like touch points is really important versus emails. And you see these emails, like they'll go past 10 and 11 back and forth, or Slacks and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's like, guys, stop. Like, let's pick up the phone or go talk to that person. Let's get it cleared up, and then let's move on. And I think, letting things go too far, or let the hands of the clock go too far, becomes a problem all the way around for everything in the business. The mental health of the people that are involved, they get frustrated, they start to talk, they get chatter, they start to get mad at different people, things like that. So like the more we can have those micro adjustments, the better we are as a
Yeah, I mean, it's touching on the phone thing, like yourself. Yeah, if something, a couple of emails, and after that, it's on the phone. And I think encouraging everyone within companies that it's not constant digital communication, which led me to something else I spotted. I think it was at the weekend, where people are sitting in the same office location, often open office location environments, sending messages to each other. I'm kind of thinking they're just across the room, and yeah, it made me think more about, communication. And I think it also came back to people being so busy that they felt it's quicker to communicate that way somehow than get up and go across, or as you say, pick up the phone. But actually, where can we create the time and space for that still to happen in between digital comms? It's got to be a balance, hasn't it?
It's got to be a balance. And I think COVID obviously did that to us, or made it go faster to more digital first, and send the Slack, send the email, that type of thing. And I think there's got to be a balance, like you say. It's so frustrating to see some of these like emails, and it's like, guys, just go talk to the person, and then they go talk to them, and it gets cleared up, and then it's gone. Everything's good, but what about this and what about that, and back and forth and back and forth, and
yeah,
it becomes really tough. But I think even in households, people text each other, you're upstairs and downstairs and things like that. It's part of our culture, but it's something that we have to just really keep in check, I think, because I think it's important.
It is important, and it connects with something we often ask people about, is that walking over to someone's desk also helps you notice other things that are not related to what you're about to chat to the person about. Could they be looking tired? Could they be looking a bit weary? Could they just not be focused? Or could they be looking a bit disheveled? Or is there other things we can notice that makes us go, you sure you're okay today?
Yeah.
That's kind of thing that we often do. Are you hybrid, remote, or on-site type of setup?
So we were, from COVID until I started, we were 100% remote work company,
right?
Which is really hard to do as an apparel company.
That's why I was asking.
Feeling product, right? And so me coming into the business, had a town hall right away. And one of the first questions that wasn't answered in the founder CEO had a town hall the week before, and there were two questions that weren't answered. And one of them was, are we coming back to the office? And so we are back in office. We're 3 days a week. So Tuesday and Wednesday are anchor days. And then Monday, Thursday, Friday, you choose as what you want. And then you can work from home the other 2 days. I'm here 5 days a week. So, I like it. I try to make the office a place that people want to come. They're comfortable chairs and standing desks, and we have music, we have food. It's a place that people should feel happy to be here, and I think they do. So people come in 4 days a week, 5 days a week also, but it gives, some people are far away and the commute's tough. So that's difficult.
Yeah. We do know that the commute itself can have an impact on people's well-being and mental health. So we need getting that balance. But I think it's from a just touching on kind of the whole mental health and well-being. I think we can notice things when people are seeing each other in person, and that's the ideal place to be checking in with people.
And it's nice to be in an office with other people, right? Like, there's interaction, there's funny things that happen, there's good stories. So the human connection is also nice. I worked from home for 10 plus years, and sometimes it gets lonely, working from home.
Yeah, and I think there you touched on something else, that work is about getting to know people, and friendships and just general chit chat. Hobbies, knowing people's hobbies, interests, what they like, what they're reading, what they did at the weekend, really kind of light, chatty talk, which again helps the team when they're actually working on something, doesn't it? It brings people together. Yeah. So if you could change one thing that would improve people's daily working lives, what would it be? It could have a knock-on effect on lots of other things, but what do you think the core thing at the moment that we need to be thinking about?
I don't know if I have a really good answer for that. I mean, I hate to go back to the ego thing, but I reiterate the ego thing, because I think it's not just with leaders, it's with everybody in the organization. When you are making decisions with your ego first, you typically are not making the right decision necessarily, right? Because you're making it for your ego. You're not making it for like the betterment of the business. So I think that is really important, because you want the business to win, right? Like the goal is for the business to succeed. The goal is not for you to succeed, if that makes sense. And I think when people kind of start to understand that we are one team and we're working as one, and we're going to make mistakes. And if you make a mistake, raise your hand and say, hey, I made this mistake, instead of like pointing a finger and trying to blame it on somebody else because you're scared, and that culture of fear, I think, is like what you said. If people feel like they're not going to get banged over the head, for making a mistake, or for saying, hey, I did that and I didn't mean to, and I'm sorry. Like, what do I need to do to fix this? That was on me. For me, that is such a sign of strength and a healthy organization. And I love that when people call it out, like, hey guys, that was me. I'm sorry. Can you help me? Or what can we do? Or how do I fix this? I'm like, man, that's what we want in this company, in this organization. So I think really checking that ego all the way through the whole, all the whole ladder in the company, I think is the best.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, in terms of, it does tend to be in kind of larger corporate organizations where that is a particular issue. The more layers, more hierarchy, that's when that kind of ego kind of goes away. In smaller companies, it's not quite as, well, it depends, but it's not quite as bad. Where it's allowed to kind of get to that point, because other people will kind of notice it more as well in smaller companies. But yeah, and I think just something that came to mind there when you were talking about kind of people owning up to things. There's something about kind of scapegoating as well. I've come across a number of different stories where people have said, I messed up here. And then there's been this whole scapegoating going on, and all these different problems arise from that person doing that. And it really creates a significant level of distrust, trauma. People start to think, I thought I could say that I'd messed up, and now I realize, having said that I've messed up, the consequences of having done that. So there's also something where people maybe do feel they can say that, but then it turns on them, and it goes all wrong. So that's also an interesting angle for all
Yeah.
companies to think about and consider. Ties in with maybe whistleblowing policies, perhaps. Yeah, but it's interesting that, where that comes from.
Yeah. And I think that's what people are afraid of, right? That it's going to spin on them and go the wrong direction. And that's where people hide things and, don't admit fault because they're afraid of it. But
Yeah.
I think it comes with the culture of the business. And if the culture of the business is to, attack somebody for making a mistake, then that's going to happen. But, if it's an open culture that allows for people to make mistakes, then, hopefully that doesn't happen as much. But I think you're right. I mean, big companies, it's tough, right?
Yeah. It is particularly tough in very big corporates, and same here in the UK. It's just a different dynamic, and a whole different structure ultimately as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just thinking there when you're talking about culture, because where does culture align with company values? And I'm just thinking about kind of the values. Obviously, you talked about culture there, and does it connect with your values? Do you find that they connect very well together for you as a company?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's kind of a natural fit with our values of, who we are, and that we are open and honest and transparent, and that goes to our company values as well. I mean, open, honest, transparent with our customers is so important. We want to be true to ourselves internally and externally. And I think you can't have a culture internally that's one thing and then your values are something else. I think that they have to go hand in hand, right?
They absolutely do. But the question certainly that goes around here is the amount of companies that have the values but actually don't live by them, which I think is very interesting.
Then it's
Because
just written down, right? Then it's just it's an exercise from a consulting firm that says, here, let's do a mission, vision, values, and this is what we're going to do, and let's write it up on the wall, and everybody, this is our mission, here's our vision, and here are our values as a company. But if you're not living it, and if your culture is not there, then it's just a big expense that you did with a consulting firm, because it doesn't work.
no,
And I've been there. I mean, I have been there in companies that we spend all this money and all this time, and you do all of this, and it doesn't equate to anything because nobody believes it.
no, absolutely. And I think there's probably still quite a lot of work to do in that space, about that alignment. There's a lot of culture work to do in many companies already. And I think the one thing that's come up in the podcast quite a lot, and I don't know if you've had that in your company in more recent times, but change. When this level, any type of change starts to create difficulties, and how is that managed, and how then you bring back you revisit the culture, you revisit values, and also when there's a change of people. So bringing in new people, how do you make sure that they're living your culture? Because we have many people who are changing jobs all over the world now who have come from quite difficult workplaces that haven't had good cultures, and they bring that in with them to a great company that has got a good culture. and you've almost got to kind of I don't know, I'm not sure if mentoring or coaching is the right way, but you've kind of got to re instill that in them, that this
Yeah.
is a different place to be, you know. And have you experienced any kind of things that you felt you've had to work harder at, either
Well, I
through
mean,
change or recruitment?
yeah, I mean, I came into the business and we had a massive reorganization, right? So it was founder led, and I said the first question that the founder didn't answer in the town hall that he gave was, "Are we going to come back to work?" The second question that he didn't answer was, "Are we going to have a reorganization?" And so when I did my town hall, I said, "Hey, I understand there was a town hall a week before announcing that, he's leaving and I'm coming in, and there were two questions that he left for me, and the coming back to work is one, and that obviously didn't go over all that great because people are like, well, are you going to reorganize? You going to pay for me to move back? We moved away, things like that. Can we do 2 days instead of 3 days? Can we do 1 day?" And then the second one was, "Are we going to have a reorganization?" And I said, "Yeah, we're going to have a reorganization." And I don't know many CEOs that announce a reorganization ahead of a reorganization, but I wanted the people that ended up staying to say, "Hey, this guy is going to be a straight shooter with me, and I can trust him." And so, we had a pretty significant riff within about 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks, something like that. And then bringing in the new people, and that, making sure that the culture that I want is there. So I was kind of able to rebuild it. But as people come into the organization now, right, and making sure that they adhere to that, I think it comes with consistency, and that the communication is there and they understand where we're going, and so they don't get kind of lost, right? Because everybody's getting the same message communicated to them, whether it be like a Slack, recap of our executive meeting, or a town hall, or any of the other touch bases that we have. I think it's important. But there can be cancers that come into organizations, and I think you got to try to figure that out as quickly as you can. And I think another learning for me would be recognizing that this is a cancer and then making a decision, on that quicker than letting it kind of spread, or, sometimes it's just not going to get better. So you just need to make a call. And that's hard also,
Yeah.
as a leader, is to, make a decision quickly and do it,
Yeah.
versus like waiting and, oh, maybe this, maybe that. And I
But
think that,
that's what good leadership is, though, Mike. Absolutely. That's good leadership to be thinking that way, um, which is something. And there's, I mean, just as you were talking there, is there anything over the last couple of years in particular that's kind of gave you sleepless nights in terms of being in the position you're in now? I mean, it sounds like, you came in, you had stuff to do. It's maybe taken a while to get traction and obviously to settle. So yeah, if anything that's you think for anyone else that might find useful as a fairly new CEO, that to be aware of.
yeah, I think I've always had the weight of, look, I've got a lot of people that their families and their livelihoods are on kind of on my shoulders. And so that weight, definitely is something that, I knew that it would be there, but didn't truly understand until you're kind of in the seat. And there's just a lot of things that happen as a leader, whether it be, we went through a sale process, which was really stressful, and hit and miss in certain points. I mean, it ended up being like the best possible situation I could have ever planned, but there were also outcomes that could have been awful, like being bought by some private equity company that would have wiped out the whole team, or whatever it is. Those are really stressful times. And I think, there's been some personal stuff that's happened in the business. We had a senior staff accountant. His name is Jose. He was in the business prior to me coming to the company, and he was one of the guys that came 5 days a week. So I got to really get to know him really well. He was from Madrid, came to the US and met his wife, and they just had a baby, and he was 37 years old, and he went for a run one afternoon, evening, and came back from his run, and he was like really out of breath, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go up and take a shower." And his wife was downstairs with the baby, and yeah, no problem. And he goes upstairs. He never came back down. He fell in the shower. I don't know exactly what happened, but he passed away. And I remember getting a call from his wife's friend who had come to the house to kind of help. And, she told me, and the ambulance was there and everything in the background. And it was like, I was like, I couldn't even believe what was happening. It was just like out of body experience, and the next morning, this was on a Sunday. The next morning I came in to the office and had a emergency town hall with everybody, and had to let everybody know what had happened. And I couldn't get it out. I mean, I'm still like emotional about it today, but like I started crying in front of everybody, and really had a hard time telling people what had happened. And that was a really impactful moment for us as an organization, and me as a human being, and us as an organization, because he was such a beloved person, and young, and baby, and wife, and just, and in great shape, super handsome. He was like one of our fit models. We'd put the medium scrubs on him because he looked so great in them. And so like those are the things that kind of happen that you just don't expect, right? I mean, comes out of the blue and hits you over the head. But we've turned it into a positive. He used to always wear this one product that was a polo shirt, and he'd wear it to the office, and he looked great in it, and it was one of our tops. It was a men's top, and so we renamed it. We refit it, and we renamed it the Calderon, which is his last name, and we donate a percentage of the proceeds to his son's 529 plan, which is like a school college plan in honor of him. And it's just like one of the little things that we can do to remember him.
And in some instances, those kind of incidents of like that, can bring people together and give them a sense of, we're kind of experiencing this pain in similar ways. Obviously, it can be deeply personal in what people go through, and as a response to, somebody passing away like that. But it can turn into a force for good, and a memory, and contribute to better things. And it can keep teams together and working well together. Having shared something like that, which is important, absolutely. And I've I think many workplaces have experienced the loss of someone in their team or their organization that they knew very well, and so there's that kind of grief. We talk about outside grief with family, friends, but actually we mustn't forget the grief that people do experience in a workplace context of a colleague. Or someone that they were working with, and often it is more of a something sudden happening. But when I announced
it at the town hall, it was like, you guys can go home or you can stay. Like, I mean, this is so traumatic and so sad, and but some of us will be here, and if you find strength in being together and talking about Jose, and like, you're welcome to stay, or if you'd rather go home and grieve at home, you're welcome to do that. And some people stayed and some people left, which was interesting too, right? That it just depended on how people kind of dealt with that news.
People respond very, very differently. And I think, what's interesting about that in itself is the acceptance of how people respond. And you just said some people did need to leave, and that was their way that they were going to be coping with it. and other people didn't need that, and just accepting that is exactly how it panned out is absolutely fine, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, nothing wrong with any of those responses.
Yeah.
I mean, some people can get, some people get to the point in circumstances like that, and you did touch on it earlier, the disbelief of something so sudden happening, that some people even carry on working, not even still believing that that person has passed, until a bit later on. So there's that delayed reaction to things like these things happening as well, that we have to respect everyone's response to whatever it is that's happened in a different way.
Yeah, it's like numbing, right? For
Yes.
some people, or
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
some people, like in tragic situations or things that happen, they laugh, or
Yeah.
they have like a total polar opposite response, and
Yep.
then later it kind of all catches up to them and they have
Yeah.
a different emotion. So
Yeah.
you just never know, right?
Yeah. All ties back to people's mental health and well-being, and also checking up with people ongoing from the event, whether it's a week later and then a month later, just checking, because there can also be delayed responses to incidences like that as well, where somebody comes back and says, I'm doing okay, I'm okay, and then even just a month or two later they have this massive crash, and that's their response. Kind of that delayed response, that shock response has come a few, a month or two later. So it's that ongoing, and you touched on that kind of throughout the chat we've been having. It comes back to culture, checking people how they're doing on a regular basis, and sharing memories and anniversaries of, Jose passing away as well. That can be quite nice, and different people's responses to an anniversary. Some people actually want to be at home on an anniversary. I mean, I know some people take annual leave day on anniversaries of grief, whether it's workplace related or family related. So yeah, it's quite interesting, the dynamics and psychology behind people, basically. Yeah. So moving on to kind of finally, what still, I mean, it sounds like, you've been doing great the last couple of years. You've kind of made many improvements. The culture is the big focus for you, which is absolutely fantastic to hear. So maybe there's not much to this question, but what does still give you hope right now, well, given the world state we're in and the impact on companies and how companies can currently function in a very dynamic world, very changeable? What gives you hope?
I mean, I think you mentioned it early on. The AI is an interesting dynamic that's come into companies, and our ability to move quickly and make decisions quickly. I mean, our biggest competitor is publicly traded, and they were founded by a investment banker, and they're just a juggernaut. But we are able to make moves a lot faster. When you're that big, it's hard to move the ship, or to turn the ship. And I say, like, hey, we're in a fast boat. I mean, we can kind of run circles around, our competition, because we have that ability to make those decisions. And I think AI is an interesting one, that I don't see it as like a job replacement. I see it as a job enhancer. But I also see it as, we have to be careful that people don't just become dependent on it and they stop thinking for themselves. Because I think it is easy to put the prompt in and then just copy and paste and send that, or put that in your presentation. But that's not why we're paying for you to be here. We're paying for you to use your mind and your experience, and then leverage AI to help you. But I don't want to just rely on AI, because I think that gets a little scary, and we've all done the prompts and you're like, ooh, that's not quite right. But I think it's exciting. I mean, there's exciting times. We're excited about our business and our path, and staying focused on who we are and not worrying about what other people are doing. And I think it's an interesting time. Things will always change, right? I mean, if there's one thing that you can count on, is things will change.
Change.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, things are
Yeah.
not going to stay the same. And I try to be aware of that, and like, wow, this is a really good time. And to be present, because I'm always like thinking forward, and I don't really always appreciate where I am today until like years later. And I look back and go, oh, that was a really cool time, or wow, I was young at that point making those decisions, and instead of like realizing it when you're in it. So I'm trying to be better at like reflecting of like being present and staying present, which I think is hard to do for me, but important at the same time.
Yeah, being present and thinking the future and being present is a challenge, and just being the kind of position you're in, that many ways you need to be thinking ahead for the company and the business. And AI will continue to be discussions we'll continue to have, and I think there's many companies that have backtracked on the job losses they made with AI, and they're now recruiting again, realizing they made a big mistake. So that's interesting. That's fast moving and ever evolving, as we already know. But I'll be doing some discussions about a book that's to do with humanity and AI and the workplace, and what you touched on, something that many people are continuing to discuss, is about helping the employees you have in your business being able to enhance, not replace. And that's exactly it. Whereas there are a number of companies that have been replacing, thinking that the AI is gonna do everything. So it's a bit like watch this space. That actually, it's continuing to move at quite a high speed. So it'll be interesting to see where that happens. Well, when there's anything kind of last minute thoughts that you've thank you for sharing everything, and including the loss of Jose as well, the story there, and what that obviously makes us think about, being human, what it means to be human as well. Any last minute thoughts?
I appreciate you having me on. It was nice to meet you. If you ever come to Los Angeles, come see us. We're close to the airport, so love to show you the office and meet you in person. Yeah.
No, it's been great, Michael. Thank you very much. It's certainly given us plenty once again on these podcasts to sit with. And to everyone listening, look after yourselves, and we'll see you next time on Inside Out.